Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television from the Helping Seniors Network of information, education, and resources.
I'm Kerry Fink, and welcome to Helping Seniors Television on behalf of our president and founder, Joe Steckler. Welcome to an edition of Helping Seniors Television I think you're going to find most helpful. As you know, we're a Florida 501c3, which is a fancy word for a nonprofit, and we're dedicated to informing, educating, connecting seniors and their families and friends to resources that will help you in developing your aging plan. And I would tell you, I think you're going to get a lot out of today's program, Let's Talk Medical, because we're going to get very, very specific. As you know, when you talk about an aging plan, we're talking about the things that you might run into, the same as when we talk about having a hurricane plan, right? Nobody wants to be involved in a hurricane, but you want a plan that says, this is how I'm going to prepare if they tell me that one is coming my way. And so the same is true in the aging world. We call it helping you get your ducks in a row, because we want you to go ahead and be proactive and start thinking about the things that, how will you react to this? And that's why I say you're going to get a lot out of today's show, because we're going to talk about medical. And in particular, we're going to talk about the top 5 reasons why seniors often end up in the hospital, and maybe some ideas that will help you not have to become part of those statistics. So our guest today is a longtime friend of the Helping Seniors organization. She's a registered nurse herself. She has her own home care organization called Avid Home Care Services, and has a long history of publishing books and articles and things in the medical field, but also has been a longtime friend of Helping Seniors as we try to educate seniors and those who love and care for them about this. So welcome, Traci Graf, registered nurse, Avid Home Care Services. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks, Kerry. I'm glad to be here.
I am so glad, because we talked about this sometime back. We did a seminar, as we often do with the Helping Seniors organization, where we invite the public in, and you did this presentation called The Top 5 Reasons Seniors Come to the Hospital. And it was, I could tell just looking at the audience how much they enjoyed it and found this worthwhile. So we said, this will make a great television show. So we have got actually some of the slides from the PowerPoint presentation. We'll drop those in at the right time. But let's talk about that. As somebody who's been in the medical profession, you've got OR experience. I mean, you've got the whole gamut. You watched this for a long time. Where do we begin on this? We've got 5 of them to cover. Where do we start, Traci?
Well, I think that we start by saying it's best really to stay out of the hospital.
Of course.
And that, you know, in home care, I didn't see that in the beginning as being one of my main focuses, but as sort of things have evolved, it's become one of my main focuses to try to keep our clients out of the hospital, right, and keep them as healthy as we can help keep them for as long as they can be. Obviously, because we're not a skilled nursing home care agency, there are some limitations, but there's no limitation on what I can do as a nurse if they're our client. So, you know, there are 5 things that AARP says for the last few years have been the top 5 reasons for seniors being admitted to the hospital. And they are congestive heart failure, stroke, complications from diabetes, medication errors, and infection.
Yeah.
So we can talk about each one individually if you'd like. Congestive heart failure is really very common, and for many years in a row has remained the #1 reason that seniors over 65 are admitted. Wow. Many people have it. It is a chronic condition that can be managed, but it does have to be managed. You can't just go to the ER because you're full of fluid, get the fluid off, come home, and forget about whatever happened before. If it happens once, you're going to have some lifestyle changes, and you're going to have to take some medications to help manage it. Congestive heart failure happens basically when the heart is not pumping effectively enough to keep all the fluids flowing in our body. Our body is like 80% water. And if the pump that circulates all that water and blood isn't pumping effectively, we start to see fluid build up in some of the lower areas of the body, typically in the legs first, Some people will see it in their abdomen swelling. They may experience shortness of breath. They may have a watery cough when they lay down, especially. Any of these signs are signs that you're basically having a backup. Your fluid in your body is starting to back up, and it'll look for places that it can go and accumulate. The soft tissue of the lower legs, the base of the lungs, and the sac around the heart are some popular places that the fluid likes to go. Those are bad places, especially if you're not getting some of the sort of buildup and warning signs to them starting, because there are patients who basically have no signs. It just suddenly comes on. It's an overwhelming amount of fluid that the body can't handle, and the heart will stop sometimes. They'll stop breathing. It's a serious problem, and it can happen fast, but it can happen slow. And typically what we see is people coming into the hospital with 30 pounds of fluid on them.
Wow.
And they don't realize that it's really happened. You know, when we would go to see them after they come home from the hospital and we'd show them, well, your weight was this when you went in and your weight was this when you came home, they're shocked. Yeah. Like, how did I gain that much fluid and not know it? We have a lot of places in our body for it to hide.
Yeah. Wow.
So when they come home, one of the absolute, for me as a nurse, one of the absolute number one things that I would teach any patient or client with congestive heart failure to do is to weigh themselves every single morning, same time, same way. If you have your nightgown on, then weigh yourself every morning in your nightgown. Really? Usually after you have gone to the bathroom, really? But before you've eaten. It's best to do it in the same place. I would usually teach patients to put a scale in the bathroom. Everybody goes to the bathroom when they first wake up. As soon as you get off the toilet, get on the scale, keep a little pad of paper there and write down the results or a calendar. And, you know, you hear from patients all the time, why do I have to do this every day? It never changes. That's exactly what we want, is for it to not change.
Right, because that would be your tip-off, right, that you got to have something looked at when you see it start to change again.
Right, and if you're doing it every day, you're going to notice it before your legs start feeling heavy, before you start feeling shortness of breath. You're going to notice a 2 or 3 pound gain in a day, and you're going to say, that's strange. Like, what did I eat? And people really, I personally think the best patients handle it well if the doctor allows them to learn to manage it. But you have to show the doctor that you're going to be responsible.
Right.
You're going to have, they'll allow you to adjust your medication if you demonstrate that you're weighing yourself every day, that you're on top of the weight, and that you know what to do if you have that 3 pound gain in 24 hours.
Wow.
So typically, when that happens, the doctor will prescribe your medication to be increased for a day or two.
Wow. Well, it's probably, each of these are probably going to wind up being worthy of a topic by themselves. But to keep us moving along so we make sure we get through all 5, congestive heart failure is top one. What's another top one?
Next is stroke.
Wow.
Stroke. Yeah. I mean, hypertension is an epidemic in this country. AFib, atrial fibrillation, is a constant chronic problem for so many Americans, and many of them don't know they have it. So there are 2 types of strokes. There can be an ischemic stroke, which is a blockage that causes the brain tissue to die because it doesn't have any blood flow around it. Then you can have a hemorrhagic stroke, which is usually fatal, and that's a sudden spontaneous bleed into the skull. So when that happens, there isn't any room and the brain is soft. People think the brain is hard. The brain is soft, like Jell-O. And the blood will collect up in the skull and it'll push the brain down. And people, unfortunately, the symptoms for that are really very vague. People just feel sleepy and they'll complain that they can't stay awake. Many of them will complain of a severe onset of a headache. Either of those things that are happening, you should go immediately to the hospital, because it's not a situation where you want to wait.
Right.
If you wait, you're going to be dead.
Right.
So I wouldn't wait. It's really better to be safe than sorry when it comes to symptoms like that. But I think the ischemic strokes are more common because we have so much AFib and because we have so much hypertension in our country and our diets. An ischemic stroke can happen from a blood clot that breaks off from inside the heart. It can happen from a tiny, tiny little piece of plaque that flakes off inside one of your arterial walls. And, I say to some of my older patients, do you know any 90-year-old pipes that are in good shape inside? No, they're crumbling. Well, so are your arteries in some ways. And if we push high flow pressure through them, pieces are going to break off and they're going to go where they're going to go to the brain. That's where they go. And so then they'll block off an artery in the brain and the area around that artery will die.
So this is really why we have to focus on keeping our blood pressure in check and these kind of things, right?
Blood pressure, especially for strokes, has to be kept under control. And it's so important. I meet all kinds of people who don't take their medication, people who take it when they feel like they need it, people who check their blood pressure incessantly throughout the day. You don't need to do any of that. You need to check it. If you're concerned 3 times a day, pick the same time every day and check it. Okay. Don't check it more than that because it changes every second.
Right.
So you'll make yourself crazy checking, and you'll make your doctor crazy by taking a list of all those. But really, the spontaneous bleeds happen when you're having blood pressure spikes. So it's like a piece of elastic being yanked on. Eventually, it's going to give way, and it's going to allow the blood to burst through the wall of the artery. So that's why even if it's high or high normal, it's better than the up, down, which is really dangerous. Yeah. And that is typically what will cause a spontaneous hemorrhage, or if somebody has an aneurysm or a AV malfunction in their brain, there's certain things that will cause it.
All right. Well, again, we could probably make a topic out of that by itself and probably should at a point, but to keep on the top 5, what's number 3?
Infection.
Mm-hmm.
Infection. And the top infections for seniors that make them be admitted to the hospital are bacterial pneumonia, which can knock a healthy senior person down for months and months and months. Skin infections.
Oh, I know.
Or urinary tract infections. The skin infections unfortunately happen because people become sedentary and they don't move around a lot. And it is not uncommon for us to find a wound that no one knew about. Wow. When someone presents to the hospital with an infection, we go looking for where's the infection. We rule out the normal places. If we can't find it, the nurse is coming in to do a full skin assessment because then we know we're going to find the source. Yeah, so it's very common. But, infection is one thing, sepsis is another thing. And sepsis is fatal for almost everyone who experiences it. And it's it's what the body does after the infection goes out of control. Sepsis is really the body's response to trying to fight the infection. But the body, in trying to protect itself, will do things like shut down the kidneys, just make them stop working. In order to try to make the body survive, it'll do different things. And, with the medical field, we'll try to stay ahead of them and we see the kidney numbers changing. We're starting to give lots of fluids. We're giving lots of drugs. Sometimes they'll even do dialysis on patients with sepsis to keep the kidneys functioning. But it really becomes, in my experience, every patient reaches a point where you start to see the spiral downward with sepsis that they're not going to come out of it.
So I guess maybe the takeaway from this is that if we're suspecting anything's going on with infection, we need to get it under control, like this way.
Yes. Kerry, I've even seen sinus infections literally eat holes through people's brains.
Wow.
So, we underestimate the bacteria that are out in our world, and the fungus that's out in the world really is scary stuff. And, if you think you have an infection, if you have something that's red, swollen, it's draining, it hurts, or you're experiencing symptoms of a urinary tract infection or pneumonia, you really should, 2 or 3 days, if you have a high fever and it's not coming down, you're not starting to turn around, you really should go be seen.
So we're talking about congestive heart failure. We're talking about strokes. We were talking about
infection.
And where does that bring us for our next one?
Would be complications from diabetes, would be the fourth one.
Okay.
And again, another chronic condition that, if not managed and not kept under control, can quickly get out of control. Unfortunately, the problem with diabetes is that most of the damage is being done before a patient knows it's being done.
Oh, wow.
So people are walking around thinking, well, my blood sugar's under control, and I may take 80 units of insulin a day, but my blood sugars are good. Well, if you're taking 80 units of insulin, your blood sugars are good because of that, but they're not. Your diabetes is definitely not under control. Right. So you may, scoot along doing that for 10 years and not have any problems, and then all of a sudden, things will start to sort of come to light. Things, retinal damage, problems in your eyes, problems with your circulation, problems with your kidneys. Really, every complication that comes from diabetes comes back to, no matter what part of the body the problem we're talking about, it almost always comes back to the fact that we've ruined the arterial walls by not maintaining our correct blood sugars. So, the problems we see in the eyes are related to blood flow. The problem we see in the legs and the feet are related to blood flow. So it all sort of goes back to that, but all that damage is being done silently without people knowing it.
Well, we see a lot of public service announcements and things that are always telling us that trying to find out if you're on the track to something early is a key to staying out of the hospital and ultimately staying out of all the complications that can arise. So I've heard there's a lot of talk about the things that you can do. I know our doctors are always talking to us about diet and things like that, but there must be a lot of things that we could try to do in a way that will, again, because that would really be the point of talking about these top 5 reasons why seniors wind up in the hospital and ways to avoid them.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I think the medical field just has gotten to the point that a lot of people think that, well, there's plenty of information out there for patients. There's plenty of places that they can get educated about this, that they can get resources. And if you're not doing it, then, it's kind of on you.
Yeah, well, that's what we keep talking about in the Helping Seniors world. Our theme is always let's get our ducks in a row, because we want to live the best life that we can at every age that we can. Right. And so many times it seems like when people run into stuff, and stuff does happen, but a lot of times, I'm sure as a registered nurse, and you see stuff coming miles down the road because of somebody's lifestyle or somebody's diet or habits or things like that. And so it really seems like it, when all these doctors and professionals are telling us we need to take better care, we probably need to heed that a lot better than we typically do.
And let's face it, the medical field, the way it is now, is your doctor has 5 minutes with you. When was the last time you were at the doctor? Did they spend more than 10 minutes with you?
Right.
They don't have the time available to themselves.
Right.
Because now all of them have corporate heads telling them you have 15 minutes to see each patient. And I don't care what's wrong, you have 15 minutes to see them. So, I think that there are definitely people who are doing the best they can in the medical field. But let's face it, if you don't get that, say you are a diabetic and it's new, but it's out of control, and you go to your doctor and then they send you to an endocrinologist and they send you to this person and they send you to a nutritionist, and now you're overwhelmed because they've given you 2 tons of information and nobody's really said to you, look, what's your lifestyle like? And let's sort of break this down to what works for you. Because this may work for everyone, but what works for you? And they just don't have the time to do that.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, consumers or patients are left to sort of navigate that themselves. Yeah. And that's not easy. And that's one of the reasons why for our clients, I do that navigation for them at no charge. I believe it benefits them and me to keep them out of the hospital and prevent some of these preventable complications from taking their lives too early.
Right. But I think there's another takeaway in here, too, that we should all probably pay attention to. And that's the fact that, at the end of the day, you're still responsible for you, right? So we've covered 4 now. We've added infection. What's the 5th reason seniors are in hospitals?
Medication errors.
And
the number 1 culprit are the blood thinners. There still are people who legitimately need to take a drug called Coumadin or warfarin. There are not many anymore that we can justify them taking that. It's not really a safe drug. It interacts with many, many, many things, including foods and juices and other medications. There's all sorts of, you have to be tested. And if you're not getting tested every few weeks, then you're bound to have a problem at some point. Typically what we see is people being admitted to the hospital. They're dizzy, they're maybe having bruising that they can't explain, or they may be having blood in their urine or blood in their stool. And sure enough, they come in and they're on blood thinners, and we check their blood and it's way too thin.
Wow.
So, whether they're forgetting that they took the pill and they're saying to themselves every day, that's a problem with taking pills out of a bottle. Say you're supposed to take your Coumadin every night at dinner. Well, you took it before you ate, and then it's sitting in front of you, and you're done eating, and you're thinking, did I take that or not? Well, that's a really important one, so I better take it again if I didn't take it. And so they take them, and it just becomes a recipe for disaster. And people, older people fall. Being on a blood thinner and falling is a horrible combination. And very honestly, I see a lot of patients who, in my opinion, as a nurse, the decision should be made to take them off the blood thinner because they are such a fall risk. And sometimes blood thinners are like this thing. Once you get on them, you never get off them. People will not question who started it, why they started it. You're on it. You're just on it.
Yeah.
And, I encounter people who have been put on blood thinners for an irregular heart rate, right, to prevent a stroke.
Right.
Regular heart rate causes blood clots to form in the heart, goes back into rhythm, boom, there they go. And yet I have them now, and they have an AICD pacemaker, which will shock them if their heart goes out of rhythm.
Oh, my goodness.
Do they need a blood thinner?
Well, probably not.
Probably not, right. But they're still on it.
Okay.
So, it just sometimes becomes one of these complacent things. Your pharmacist is a fantastic resource to talk to your pharmacist if you question whether a drug is needed for you or if it's the right drug. I am also a big fan of the prepackaged pills from the pharmacy. Many of them do them. They do different kinds. Some of them do them on a roll. But the ones I like the best look like a little folder, and they have the pockets with the AM, noon, PM, bedtime pills in them. There are so many benefits to getting that service. They deliver them for free. There's no cost for the service. The biggest benefit is that they are the bottleneck for your prescriptions, more so than just a bottle being called in. Because in order for them to get in the middle between your doctor and yourself, they have to verify that each prescription is correct, that each one is right, that nothing interacts, and some of them may be from 4 different doctors.
Right.
But the pharmacy has to verify that they are all not interacting, they're all correct. It's the best way to make sure your medication is right.
Sounds like it's actually
the best way
benefit for you as the person taking the medication.
Yes. And as a senior, it's a fantastic benefit. And some of the pharmacies call them compliance packs. Because a nurse can walk in and see if you're taking your medicine at any time. Right. And if you're returning them to them when they deliver them to you and you're giving them ones that are still half full, they're going to call your doctor and say, hey, she keeps returning these pills.
Such a good point. We're talking with Traci Graf, registered nurse and owner of Avid Home Care. And our topic today is Let's Talk Medical. Now, you guys are very, very appropriate help for seniors in their own home. And I want to make sure if this has, piqued some questions or people say, I'm really interested, or I'm concerned about aunt or uncle, mom or dad, whoever it is. Now, one of the things that we've talked about is you as a registered nurse, you're actually the person that meets with the family or meets with the patient. And really, because of your own background, you're able to really look at it from those sides. I wanted to ask you if somebody's interested in getting in touch with Avid Home Care Services, what are a couple of ways for them to learn more?
You can look us up online. We have a lovely website, www.avidhomecareservices.com. We have a Facebook page that myself and another person regularly post things on. And we have an office in Merritt Island that you can call, 321-392-3400. And feel free to call and ask some questions if that's all you need. The person answering the phone typically is my son, who is my scheduler and office manager. His name is Jefferson. And you can call and talk to him. He can answer a lot of questions. I think that we are very dedicated to making home care be useful, professional, and affordable for people. We're very flexible with scheduling so that pretty much anyone can afford to get that help if they need it. If all you need is once a week to go shopping and get your groceries back in the house and put away, we have no problem helping you do that. If all you need is transportation to doctor's appointments, we have no problem helping you do that.
Yeah. And I think one of the best advantages you get is the opportunity to talk with you because, you contribute so many articles and things on a whole variety of topics because of your experience in the career. And I think today, just talking about these top 5 reasons why seniors wind up in a hospital is important because awareness of what's going on is the first step. But as I hope you've also taken away from today's program, there is a lot of power you have to prevent these things from happening if you get ahead of it. And that's why we're always kind of almost pleading, Traci, from the helping senior side to let's put our ducks in a row. Let's do this the right way. We don't have to be the victims of some of our own missteps if we just get ahead of it. So thank you for joining us today. That's about the time we have for Helping Seniors TV on this edition. We'll see you next time. On behalf of Joe Steckler and our entire Helping Seniors team, thanks for watching today.
I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses, and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.